I'm your host, Scott Norton, and welcome to At Large. On this show, I talk to world-class creatives who use business to bring their ideas to life. We'll hear about their creative practices, their most interesting stories, and the lessons that will inspire you the way that they've inspired me. Today we welcome John Fiorentino in Los Angeles as he makes a stopover from Tokyo to New York. As you'll see, John is an idea guy like no other, the creator of the gravity blanket and other inventions which have gone from aha moments to earning hundreds of millions in revenue over the past 7 years. I ask how he went from sleeping on the subway to selling a company, what it's like to work through a creative dry spell, how he hunts for big ideas, and whether or not G-Wagons are tacky. Please enjoy my conversation with John.
LA. We're here.
I would say I think everyone in life has two phases, self-promotional phase and truth-telling phase. And I like to catch people in their truth-telling phase.
I don't know which one I'm in. Yeah, I guess I don't really have anything to talk about or promote, so I'll be in truth-telling phase.
Well, I have a couple of questions for you, and I've got a lot of curiosity. We've sat down a couple times and I've heard your story in kind of bursts. I want to start with a question for you. That there's this common saying of people, I think, that often like want to sound smart in entrepreneurial circles, that ideas are a dime a dozen, and that execution is what's rare or scarce. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so that's been my little, famous carve out that's got me into a lot of trouble on the internet, on Twitter mostly. And what's got me on a lot of these podcasts is basically saying that ideas are actually the most valuable thing. The very simple way to think about it is you can't teach someone how to have good ideas, and you can teach someone how to execute. And if you can teach someone how to do something, it's less valuable than the thing that is unteachable.
Right.
Yeah, and I think I'm starting this conversation at a very relevant time where if all of this stuff with AI and, if we continue down the S curve of technology, then execution starts to actually look indistinguishable from having an idea, because there actually isn't anything to execute other than the idea. The very simple way is, even at the root of execution is an idea. What does the boss say when he walks into a boardroom? Who's got any ideas? It's not like who's executing better. It's like literally, what do you do to execute that? At the root of that is you have to have a unique insight in order to put that action into play. And if you're putting action into play that is not unique, it's not valuable.
Yeah.
So ideas in my mind are definitely way more valuable than execution.
Well, I love this contrarian view because, as much as execution is of course important, because without that, nothing gets done. Yeah. So many ideas just look the same as each other, right? They're not really original ideas. I mean, there's so many, whether it's businesses or films, television shows, they're all kind of templatized.
Yeah.
And I see you as the leader of a parade of move away from templates, create original ideas, things that are weird, things that aren't going to get funded right by a formulaic investor who's pattern matching. So let's talk about how you have created the conditions to have unique ideas.
Yeah, I don't know, right? And I think that's probably...
So it's not, you don't see it as a muscle that you develop in yourself?
I go back and forth. I don't know. It's kind of the nature versus nurture argument. I'm much more on the end of it's 90% nature. I don't think you can study your way to being Elon Musk, right?
Yeah.
If that was the case, there would be a lot more of Elon Musk.
Right.
Yeah, you can sway your IQ a couple points here and there, but basically what you are born with is kind of set the parameters for what you're able to do. So I mean, that's actually a pretty controversial take.
Well, it's okay.
Cut that one
You're in your
out.
truth-telling phase. Yeah.
But it's very true, right? When people are I'm going to be the next Elon Musk or whatever, I'm like, oh, you are? That's cool. Have you ever gone to the nightclub and chosen to read an entire physics textbook? And they're like, no. I'm like, okay, well then you're probably not going to be the next Elon Musk. Like that is something that is not teachable. Like no one would have that. Like that's not like a playbook that you can implement. That is like a total weird, like, amalgamation of a thing in his brain that makes him that way. And I think with ideas, like I think you can say like similar things. Like I don't know if I've ever really actually like changed. Like I've kind of been doing the same thing my entire life. I've been having weird ideas. I've been implementing them in strange ways. I've always forever been creating a thing to like ship to someone in some way and present it, whether that's like a song or like a video with my handheld camcorder when I was like 10, or like a lemonade stand, or like any of these things. Like I've been doing and flexing the same muscle like forever. And I don't know if that muscle has grown because of that, or if it just is there and I can use it.
I hear you. Well, let's go back to, you talk about a song. So you were a jazz musician?
Yeah, I was a musician.
So how did you go from studying jazz or being a drummer and working with Justin Bieber?
I was at school. I was at NYU playing music, and I actually had a few conversations with the teachers at the school, and they were like, I was like, I don't know if I really want to do this forever. Like, I don't know if I really want to be like a drum teacher when I'm like 60. Like, I like doing all this other stuff. And I was like, instantly just got like introduced to like Drake's agent, and I started working.
What year was this?
This was like 2010. It
Gotcha.
actually happened before I went to NYU.
Uh-huh.
Before I went to the city, I was like, just like people like put me in touch with these guys, and I just started working. I started like helping set up these like Drake shows and Chainsmoker shows like in like the basements of these like New York clubs.
Oh yeah, what clubs?
The Delancey.
Okay.
Remember that one?
Yeah.
That was a big one with the Chainsmokers, and then like a few other things. But that sort of just happened, and then I was like, oh yeah, like there's this whole other world out there of like things that I could create and build and like present. It's like it doesn't have to be me just playing drums. I can do this in other ways. And then yeah, like I basically like started working in the music industry here and there, doing these like odd favors for these agents, and then basically went out every night with the idea to meet. I really wanted to work with either Kanye or Bieber.
Oh.
I went out every night basically searching for their teams, and I got Kanye. And I talked to Kanye and Virgil, and they basically like immediately like rejected me. They were just like, yeah, like
you met them both?
Yeah, I went up to them. I actually
Where did you see them?
I went up to them. I actually fucked up really bad with them, and it was like, oh yeah, like that was like the first lesson of just like don't ever exaggerate anything.
They called you on your bullshit?
Yeah, my buddy knew I mean, everyone that I talked to, I was like, I want to get in touch with these guys. Can someone help me get in touch? One of my buddies called me and was like, Kanye's team is having a listening party tomorrow night. You should come. And I was in LA and I couldn't get back in time. The next night, I was out at the Standard, and Virgil was there and Kanye was there. And Kanye like left. And I was like, okay, now is the time to like go and just say something. Because this was at the time when no one knew their creative team. Like no one knew who Virgil was. Like that was like before he did like anything in
Off-White or anything like that.
Like the fact that I knew him was what got his attention.
Yes.
So like I went up to him and was like, oh, hey man, like, oh, you guys were at the listening party last night. And I was like, yeah, I saw you guys at the listening party last night. Because I was like, when he looked at me strange, I like immediately I was like, oh, I have to say something.
This is like, now's the moment.
Yeah. And I was like, oh yeah, I saw you. And he goes, no, you didn't. And I was like, oh, like, okay. And he's like, nah, we missed our flight. We didn't go to the listening party. And I was like, oh, fuck. I was like, oh yeah, like they just caught me.
Oh.
So I sat there and I waited like 20 minutes, and then I went back and I was like, okay, you were right. I was totally bullshitting you. I heard you guys were there. I needed a way to introduce myself, and that was it. And they both died laughing. They were like, we fucking knew it.
Oh
and
my gosh.
I was like, can I just give you my number if you need anything? And I was like, I'm 19, like, please, like, if you need anything. And they like Virgil like took the card and was like, yeah, like shout out to the 19-year-olds and just walked past me. And I was like, oh no, like it's over. Never heard from them
Never
again.
got a call back.
And then like 3 weeks later, yeah, I ran into Scooter. I got out of a cab. He was standing in front of me. I had been emailing him for like 6 months.
So you just recognized him.
Recognized him.
You,
Again, like
and
no
that's the
one.
beauty of New York City.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Is if you know what someone looks like, you're gonna see them.
Yeah. That's all. I always tell people that when they're like, oh, like how do you do this or how do you get into that? It's like, it's very simple. Like you go to New York, like where do you want to work? Oh, you want to work at like Def Jam? Like go to their address and just sit in the lobby and like wait for them to walk out. Like that's it. This isn't a secret. Like you know where they are. You know where they go. You can give them something of value when they walk by you. And then boom, you probably have a job in the mailroom for a second. Like New York is the best place to go if you just want to like run into like someone that can teach you something.
Yeah. And that's the other thing, by the way. I mean, we were talking about Gen Z and how they live their life on the internet is people don't have chutzpah anymore.
Yeah.
Right? They call it Riz as if it's some special skill, but like you have to put yourself out there and sit in the lobby, right? And wait for someone and approach someone. You have to have the cojones to go up to Virgil Abloh and be like, I saw you at the listening party, right?
When he wasn't there.
Maybe half the time it's not going to work out for you, but half the time, especially if you're telling the truth.
Yeah. Yeah, it can work. It worked with Scooter. I went up to him on the street. I was like, hey, man, I made a joke about how he wasn't answering my emails. We ended up having like a conversation for like 20 minutes. I was like, you know, give me a job. Like, come on. I have all these ideas. I started telling him about like what I would do if I was him. And he was like, okay, if you can get to LA like next week or so, like I'll let you like work with me for a little bit. And so I basically like dropped out of school, went to LA and just started working with them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And what were you doing for him?
Probably like less like I don't even want to call it an internship because there was nothing. I would basically just like drove them around and then we would like I would like chime in and it was very fucking annoying and would like throw out my ideas like while we were in the car. And like a few of them landed and so they like kept me around.
That's all it takes.
But I only lasted like a little bit and then yeah, Scooter like pulled me aside and was like, yo, like you're the worst employee ever. Like you will never work for anyone. Just like go start your own company already. And I was like, okay.
So that was your Bieber run?
Yeah, pretty much.
Working with Bieber. Did you learn anything about surviving fame from spending time with them?
Yeah, I think the fame thing is I learned that I was not cut out for that world. I don't think many people are.
What does it take?
You have to be like the only way to talk about this is to be a huge asshole.
That's fine. I'm just curious.
The real answer is that the secret of Hollywood is that everyone knows that fame is actually the worst thing that you could be doing to anyone.
Yeah.
But the unspoken thing is that everyone knows that they're basically
it's a curse.
Dealing drugs. Yeah. It's like we're giving them this person.
Oh, I see. Like being a kingmaker or being a gatekeeper is like, we are going to invite this person and they think they want it, but they actually have no idea how much torment it's going to create.
Yeah. I mean, have you seen did you see the documentary Uber Supermensch?
Yeah, of course.
Not Uber.
Yeah. No, well, that's close, right? And that's where the name comes from, right? Yeah. Shep Gordon.
Yeah. Do you use the line in it when he used to say that he would make his artists sign a contract that said, basically, you are selling your soul to me. If I do my job right, you will die. Remember that?
Yes.
Yeah. So like that's Hollywood.
At least he's telling it like it is.
Yeah, he did it honestly. But like it was like making the person the product, you are stealing their soul.
Yeah.
If you really think about the obsession with actors, it's hysterical.
Tell me, why is it funny?
I mean, have you ever seen Instagram or TikTokers like, you know, you see them doing the dance and the dance is pretty cool. You know, your ape brain sort of like clings onto it. They're like, oh, this is cool.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen them set up?
It's the least cool thing.
It's like,
yeah, you can imagine.
No, like, I can't. That's horrible. Like, that is like the least cool thing ever. It's the exact same thing for whatever reason with actors. If if you actually hung out with these people, they feel totally different. And then you're like, why do they feel that different? The Tarantino movie, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, is like brilliant. It's
Yeah,
like one of
it's
my
so
favorite
good.
movies of all time because of this. Because like you see, Tarantino makes movies about movies, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is like a movie about movies in movie land. And so it's like
So
amazingly
meta.
perfect.
Yeah.
And I mean, you see it with Leonardo DiCaprio's character where like they cut and like how he acts. He acts like a fucking like weird child. It's like, like he's like throwing temper tantrums. He's super insecure. He's like, get the line right. Like really like our obsession with actors as celebrities is people that have figured out how to say a line the right way. That's insane. I really have high hopes that AI ruins all of this for everyone and we get snapped back to actually like hardcore reality, which might happen. I really am hopeful that it might happen. Like my friend has this good line where he says, the internet was never meant for humans. It was just an organization protocol for machines. And this weird interplay that we're in right now of like us actually trying to exist within the machine protocol has like totally ruined us.
Oh, wow.
And I kind of agree with that.
Oh my
and I
gosh.
think AI might take it. AI and crypto, this like yin yang thing that's happening,
Yeah.
that might create this new like Higgs boson field where it just goes back to,
and we can just be humans again.
we could just be humans again. This is what happens in all of the good sci-fi. And all of the good sci-fi that talks about AI, the AI at the end, they leave.
So it's so interesting because you were talking about your time like with celebrities here. You're sitting here having built multiple businesses. One of the things that's you always strike me as someone who's moved between a lot of rungs of society.
Oh yeah.
And you at a time, tell me about being homeless.
I just didn't have money and I didn't have a place to sleep. I started sleeping on people's couches. That ran out after a little while. And it was just like, okay. I mean, yeah, like to be fair, could I have gone back to my parents' house in the middle of nowhere, Massachusetts? Like, sure, I guess. But like that wasn't a choice. If I did that, I'd be out of the game.
Defeat.
Exactly. I would be admitting defeat and I'd be out of the game.
Yeah.
If I want to build something on my own, this is the only path that I can take. And, it was funny, like, it was like my mom found out that I slept on the subway a few times and she like called me crying, was like, you fucking lost your mind. Like, what is going on? I was like, you don't get it. Like, I had a meeting at 8 a.m. I had to be in the city. Like, I didn't have anywhere to stay. Like, what do you want me to do? I'm not like going back to Boston.
Right.
I would have missed the meeting. And that meeting basically set me off on the path to success. Right. So it was like worth it. And, I wrote this piece about what I thought the future of AR and virtual reality was going to be. And someone at Snapchat saw it and like, they offered me like a crazy job. They offered me like a couple $100,000 to go like work there. And, I turned it down and my mom heard about that and was like, this is unwell. Like you're an unwell person.
So you're experiencing homelessness, sleeping on the subway. You got offered like a wild job from Snapchat. What was it that you turned it down to pursue? What were you after?
That was the other thing, is that there wasn't an answer.
You didn't know, but you just knew that this thing was settling.
The thing that I kept repeating in my head over and over and over again was I needed to make something that people wanted, that helped them, that made me money. I just needed to make something work.
So let's get into that. It sounds like you had a sense of self-possession. You're like, I need to be the author of something. It's going to come from this kind of creative muscle that you were probably born with, but you've developed. And it needs to be your livelihood. And you want to control it and own it. And you want to bring something into the world that the world can embrace. Lead that up to one of your big ideas, the gravity blanket. So you were homeless. You're sleeping on the subway. How does that lead into the gravity blanket? Tell us the story.
I went to a meeting. One of the meetings that I had to sleep on the subway to be in the city to have was with a sleep scientist. I was making a pillow. I basically was like, insanely tired in the meeting. She made a joke about it. And I made a joke about how, you have to forgive me because I slept on the subway last night. She got really nervous and started to be like, oh, are you okay? This and that. And I was like, oh yeah, no, it's fine. I slept in my bags. I cuddled in my bags. I was like, fine. And her response was, oh, that's a real thing. If you sleep with 10% of your body, it is a natural anxiety reliever and it helps you sleep better. And I was like, holy shit, like that. Why have I never heard of that? There's no product out there. It really only existed in this niche medical community for people with PTSD and children with autism. I guess that's a product that exists for those people, but like I want one designed and made for me because that sounds amazing. And then that moment led to basically the pursuit of that. But at the same time, I was doing like 5 other things. I didn't know which one was going to work, and I was just really forced to chase things that I thought was cool and that I thought helped other people, and that one clearly had the most market demand.
So when you're in this moment, you had this kind of big bang where you realized, wait a minute, if you sleep with 10% of your body weight on you, you sleep better. This only exists for niche audiences right now.
Yeah.
And I could create something for me and for regular people on this thesis.
Yeah. I mean, there was nothing online. There was nothing. No one was selling weighted anything.
Did the name come to you in that moment? Or how did the name come to you?
The name was like a joke almost. I was working with a media company to launch it. And we didn't have a name. We were in a meeting or something, and I was like telling them about the plan and whatever. And then either I said it or someone said it when we launched this thing, like, the weighted gravity blanket, or like it was like a quick thing that
like a throwaway comment.
Yeah. And I remember it was either I said it or someone else said it, but like it went into the room and I was like, whoa. I was like, that's the name. That's the name. Dude, we're calling it the gravity blanket. That is perfect. It's like, it's probably one of the best names of all time.
Yeah.
It was so good that for like 2 years, like gravity blankets was like the Kleenex.
Yes.
It was like
the category creator.
Yeah. There wasn't a difference between weighted blankets and gravity blankets.
Right. It's a brilliant name.
Yeah. But again, how do you have those moments of like creativity? I think it's just being like super receptive and open to, the fact that probably one of the best ideas or the best names came from this like weird improvised sort of like awkward. It was like to fill an awkward moment in a room.
Absolutely.
And like that is actually like true magic.
So with the gravity blanket, you started as a Kickstarter project and you ended up raising over 4.7 million through Kickstarter alone.
Yeah, it was just Kickstarter. It was about $5 million of pre-orders in 30 days. It was pretty cool.
And so how do you think that financing it, starting it on Kickstarter, shaped the trajectory of the business, the way that you thought about bringing this thing into the world?
Well, it was very obvious that the gravity blanket thing, like it really actually went viral. And there was such a demand for that it just happened. I have yet to find something that really works on like a gigantic scale in consumer as a product that doesn't really have that initial like light up moment with the consumer. If a consumer product founder is raising money, that's actually a bad sign. Like just the fact that he has to raise money is bad. Because it means that he hasn't created the thing that actually matters, which is getting someone to line up for your product before they even have felt it.
Right.
Like if we were going to make like a t-shirt company, we should be able to make one with basically costing us nothing. And we should be able to stand outside on the street and we should be able to sell about 10 of them in a day. And we should tell them that they have to give us the money first and we're going to ship it to them in like 6 months. And if you don't have that demand for the product that you made right up front, you probably will never get it.
Right.
I've never had anything work with a physical consumer product where it immediately you didn't have like a sign up wait list, like go off of the charts.
Right. So you look for this blistering demand of like, not even product market fit, almost like concept market fit. Because people are buying it sight unseen.
Yeah.
They're waiting 6 months to get it shipped. They're shelling out cash today.
Yeah.
That's really what you need to see in order to say, okay, this thing is going to take.
Yeah.
And then tell us about what was the rest of the journey with Gravity Blanket like? I mean, you pre-sell all these or you raise this money on Kickstarter.
Yep.
And what happens next?
What happens next is that I went to China to set up manufacturing. Went around Asia, went to Japan, went to a bunch of places, and basically had like 17 ideas on that trip and was like, oh wow, like I really want to do this. I want to see if I can do this again. Or like, did I just get lucky, right? Like, did I just get lucky with finding this thing, like putting it out in the world? Or like, do I actually have the capacity to do this over and over and over?
Even when it was still early innings for Gravity Blanket, right?
Yeah.
Because you're like going on a sourcing trip
Yeah.
and you're like, oh, well, can I do this again? Like create an idea
Yeah.
that itself will basically sell out before it's even sold.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And like, I think that's sort of like what Gravity set me up to do, was it gave me the freedom to go and experiment with a bunch of other stuff to find a rhythm that I could sort of flex that muscle of, creativity and funnel it into an enterprise,
Yeah.
And yeah, that was sort of the test. And so yeah, like basically since Gravity, once a year I've launched a new one.
So let's talk about those. So what were some of the other ideas, concepts that you created on that trip or that you've done since the success of Gravity Blanket?
Moonpod was found in Japan.
And tell us, what is Moonpod?
Moonpod is a new type of beanbag. We call it a zero gravity beanbag. Yeah, the most comfortable chair ever. And then I did a company called, I had an idea for 365 candles.
Mm-hmm.
One for every day of the year you were born on, and it's your birth date candle.
Mm-hmm.
Just a gift idea, and that's turned into basically personalized astrology gifts, where we now sell books, jewelry, candles, scents, like a bunch of different stuff. And then Moon Pals, which is a weighted stuffed animal with a whole story behind it.
So tell us the story,
pal.
because we actually have.
We got the
you
pals.
can grab yours, but I've brought. These are the Moon Pals that you can see. From the Norton household, my daughter and my son's Moon Pals, who are just wonderful friends in our household that they're obsessed with.
Really?
My daughter especially.
Do they still use it?
Oh yeah. This is Opal, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So she loves Opal the Moon Pal, and yeah, she loves it.
Yeah.
That's the one thing about kids is, I think as adults you think that kids have a short attention span, but kids have a much longer attention span than adults. Kids they don't get tired of toys.
The kids thing is, I mean, talk about how do you find real signal?
Yeah.
Because they do not know how to lie, and they do not respond to anything that isn't real.
Yeah.
And
they can't be duped by like performance marketing, right?
No.
They're not looking at ads.
No. And like,
it's about the physicality of the product.
A lot of the big, like, venture-backed toy companies or whatever, like you go and you talk to people that buy those, and like parents buy it and the kids never touch it.
Mm-hmm.
Like no one told me I had to like fall in love with like SpongeBob or like The Lion King or like something like that, right? Like those just sort of like existed, and like immediately I was just like drawn to it, and I watched it every day, all the time, forever, right?
Yeah.
Those were very, very special creations that were not like forced upon a market. There's like a thing in business and in consumer especially that like all of this is bullshit, and you're like always tricking people into like taking their money from them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just like, I wish that was the case, because life would be way easier.
Because what you're saying is it can't be engineered. It has to be discovered. Yeah. And you're out there looking for these rich seams of like little tiny moments that might be a throwaway statement or like a random thought that's like something that's so powerful and so pure that a child would become obsessed with it just for them. It's magnetism.
Yeah.
And Moon Pals is one of those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think those moments, it's a very weird thing once you get that moment, because then how do you foster that and make sure that it lasts for a very long time?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what I was going to say is, has it been frustrating for you? Like, do you feel like you've been in a dry spell for 2 years?
Yeah, totally.
Is it
when you hear artists talk about albums, it's like a very similar thing where it's like, when someone puts out a work of art, and when they're fulfilling their contract with the label, and like it's very different feeling on the album. It's a very different response. It comes from a totally different place than hitting this like linear sort of chart, and it's very uncomfortable for the person going through that and everyone watching them,
right? Because
it's like you're only as good as the last hit that you had.
The torment of being an idea guy. Because these, execution
lives and
guys,
die by the
execution
ideas.
guys, they can be like, well, every day I get up
You
and I
get up and
execute, I
do
go to
it.
bat. It's okay. It's okay if the ideas aren't that great because you're there, you're in comfort every day in that
Yeah.
execution. How has your relationship with the concept of like doing business evolved? I mean, you were a jazz drummer,
Yeah.
you were like showing up like hucking ideas at Bieber, and now you may or may not self-identify as an entrepreneur, but you've started and run businesses. How has that relationship changed over time?
I think that there's a larger pie that exists where all of these things sort of exist together and are dependent on each other. And if you just take a slice, you're missing the larger point of the actual whole fulfilled pie. And I guess the pie could be like a metaphor for like, a true creation.
Like the creative element, the consumer emotions, the business model.
If you make the best piece of art, it needs to exist within an incentive structure and with enough oxygen to go.
Yes. I mean, the idea of like being with all due respect to the talented creative directors out there, because I'm like not a talented creative director, it would be incredibly frustrating to me to be like put in a box as like creative director while other people are actually responsible for like, okay, well, does this have a sustainable economic model? And like, who's the talent involved? And like, how are we going to reach people for this? Like you're describing kind of using your creative instincts and your idea generation to all elements of getting this thing out in the world and creating an economic flywheel to make it happen.
Yeah. Right.
That very much resonates with me and other creatives that I talk to that have ended up in business, is that it is you are creating this kind of total work of art in a business, and it's a living organism. I remember when we first met, you were on the precipice to sell one of your companies.
Yep.
And that didn't go as planned.
Nope.
Tell us that story. What was that like for you?
What that was that I, kind of learning that companies don't really get sold, they get bought. There was a lot of people trying to buy one of my companies, actually a few of them.
This is early 2022.
It was basically 10 months of doing this process. As we were crossing the finish line, the market sort of collapsed and the buyer pulled out. Yeah. I mean, what did I learn from it is that, nothing's real until it is. Like nothing's real until the money's in the bank. What I also learned is that anyone that's building a company to get bought is playing a very dangerous game that is essentially, in my opinion, a very foolish way to spend your life. What was really nice was that when it didn't happen, there was actually a piece of me that was very relieved that I still had it. I actually learned a little bit more about the different way in which I valued the thing that I was working on.
Oh, interesting. What did you then realize that you were getting out of it that you didn't recognize that you were getting out of it before?
I'm in a very unique position owning it myself without any investors. And that comes with a lot of freedom and a lot of room to do whatever I want within that company. So I can use the money for whatever. I can use the money to make a weird alien, right? I can use the money to reinvest it back into the company. I don't have anyone telling me what to do, which gives me a competitive advantage to go and play against the market in a very interesting way.
Yeah.
Whoever ends up buying this, if I ever sell these things, is going to like get a very cool thing that's very hard to replicate.
It's built to last, not built to sell.
Yes. Yeah.
It's a real gem and it's a total work of art.
It's fun. It's creative. People love it. It's helping people and I'm making money.
Okay. So related to that, religious, right?
Yes.
What's it like to be religious in an increasingly secular world?
Well, it's kind of cool because it's kind of the only thing that you can identify as now that is like counterculture and rebellious.
It's
like,
so true.
It's the only thing. Like if you're at a dinner table and everyone goes around the dinner table and's like, I have to go to synagogue or temple or I have to go home for this religious thing. All of that is totally accepted and looked over. But if you say that you have to leave to go to some Christian prayer meeting, you are an insane person. Like everyone freaks out. They sort of immediately hate you. They get super offended. Oh, you're one of those. And so it's like pretty funny.
It is actually hilarious that like Christians are now synonymous with evil in America.
Yes.
In these coastal elite
Like
circles.
100%. If you think about everything that we have been told is evil in the last 50 years, they are inherently core Christian values, which
Yeah.
is crazy.
It is so
It's
wild.
crazy. If you just took a lot of, what those values are and what this book says is right, and you took them out of that context and you had a conversation with everyone, almost everyone would agree that that is right, that is true. They agree with that.
Well, the book is complex, but certainly Jesus. The teachings of Jesus.
Yes.
There's a
it's just
human
like
being on earth.
the dude was obviously chill.
Yeah.
Like he was like totally like right.
He got it.
And cool and great. There's not a lot that he says that people would disagree with,
Right.
but you say the name and people freak out.
Right.
You say the Bible, people freak out. You say Christianity, people freak out.
Have you become more religious over time?
I was never really religious.
When did you start becoming more engaged in your faith?
I mean, I'll approach it from the very startup bro framework of just like, I just went down a path of trying to get better.
Yeah.
Over and over and over and build a thing and, make my life into something that like sustains. You try a bunch of different things. I tried my ideas. I tried, Buddhist ideas. I tried all of these things. And the thing that gave me the most success and the most stability and the most sort of fulfillment just happened to be the Christian way.
Mm-hmm.
But I would challenge anyone to do a fun little experiment. Approach it with a lean startup method or some bullshit, and like take a month, pick out these texts, these ways of life, these belief systems, and just basically commit to that 1,000% literally. And like, it's very obvious that your life just gets way better.
Interesting.
Right. So it's like, okay, like, taking the Tony Robbins playbook, following that, like it was cool.
Yeah.
Like the ice bath was cool.
Yeah.
Pounding my chest and saying like, I believe in myself. Like that worked a little bit. It didn't really sustain. Following the teachings of something like the Bible has just been way better.
And it's probably so overlooked because people see it as old or outdated or Republican or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think, you're getting at this point that like a lot of people, I mean, quote unquote, like progressives, probably like listeners of this podcast would be more likely to experiment with like microdosing mushrooms than they would following the teachings of Jesus for a month.
Yeah.
And what a bizarre.
It's very strange.
Yeah.
It's very strange.
And
I mean, I've never done drugs, so maybe they're right.
Well,
like maybe I should do mushrooms and I'll like forget about the religious nonsense.
The nice thing about the religion is that you don't need any accessories, right?
Yeah.
It's really just about belief and behavior
and
action.
I actually think the religion thing is there's a better way in my mind to think about it than belief. It's just, it's kind of like what is true and what is your definition of truth. And I would say probably one of my definitions of truth is like just having a material cause and effect and having that thing that comes from the cause, the effect be measurable and repeatable. I would say that's probably true. Like if a Michael Jackson song comes on and everyone starts dancing and then you turn it off and everyone stops, it's probably, there's like a very real truth that like lifted everyone's free will from them, got them up and started dancing. It's like, it's fair to say that it is true that Michael Jackson creates bangers.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, that is true.
Empirically true. Yeah.
If you do you don't have to really believe in these things. If you just take them totally literally and you do them, your life gets better.
And I think that literalness is like in a lot of ways, like we with religion, we want to see through all the analogs and interpret it. And I remember when we were at dinner, we were talking about religion. And you were like, well, Scott, what does it feel like when you have a good idea? Like, what does that idea sound like in your head? I'm like, well, it's optimistic, like it's hopeful, like it's energizing, like it's positive, it's relieving. And he's like, okay, like, what does the voice sound like when you have like a bad idea? And I'm like, well, it's generally like comes from a place of envy, or I'm tired, or I'm desperate, or I feel like scarcity. And you're like, exactly.
Yeah.
One of those is the voice of God, and the other one is the voice of Satan. And I was like,
it's true.
oh yeah.
It's true.
Like,
I mean, think about it. When you want to get drunk, what does the voice sound like that's telling you it's okay to get drunk?
Right.
It's like a little whisper. It's like, it's okay.
Yeah, right.
And then it's like, serve your family. It's like that voice is totally different.
Yeah, it really
comes from a different place.
It really is. Yeah. No, fascinating. What are your biggest creative inspirations?
I think I honestly think it's not necessarily a person or a thing. It's really just experiencing something that's true. Yeah, it's like I will get super pumped and inspired when like I see someone, drink like a glass of water that they really needed. I'm like, God, that's fucking sick. I'm like, yes. It's like that will like trigger some weird, like creative campaign in my head, or I'll be like, holy shit, we have to change this. Like we need more of that feeling of someone thirsty drinking water.
So this emotional cause and effect that's like brick to forehead, high impact. A Michael Jackson song where people have no choice but to be possessed into dancing.
Yeah, totally.
A glass of water when someone is incredibly thirsty.
Yeah.
Like these moments of like emotional transformation, and satisfaction.
It's like it's like getting hit in the face with an objective truth. I mean, I think finding things like that exist in the world that people have that reaction to is probably the only thing.
I love that. What an amazing hunt that a life is that is hunting for these things that
it's
are
fun.
Transcendent, high impact experiences.
Totally.
Have you ever felt like you've had an idea stolen from you?
All the time.
Tell me.
I've started to preface my conversations with before I say an idea, I say, now what is about to be presented is mine.
Right.
I had this idea. I have heard your ideas. They do not sound anything like this. I know where these came from, and I can tell you about that moment. You can't. So what I'm about to say is mine.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't do that and you're having a conversation and you're sharing it, everyone thinks it was theirs. And it's very, very, very clear. And again, it's very obvious how valuable ideas are when you have a good one and you don't want anyone to take it from you.
Mm-hmm.
And people will take it from you and they'll try. And then it's funny because it's like, wait, I thought ideas weren't valuable. Why are you trying to take this from me? Don't, whatever, use another one. And then they see very quickly that there's a reason why they don't want to use another one. They want to use this one.
Yes.
Because it's more valuable. Right after Gravity Blanket, I kind of became like the guy that you called to like talk about product ideas, which is funny because I'd never made a product. And I started to give people ideas and then they would do it and then they would make a ton of money. And I would call them back and be like, oh, cool, man. Like, buy me a Ferrari or something. And they'd be like, what are you talking about? That was my idea. And I was like, it's like, it wasn't. So I played, I'll tell you about the time.
Yeah.
I started playing this trick on people and they would ask me for ideas and whatnot. I just started telling people like really hysterically bad ideas. And a few people did them.
What are some
One
examples?
was like a double-sided toothpaste. Double-sided toothbrush.
Uh-huh.
I was like, yeah, one side is this bristle and the other side is this bristle. And I was like, yeah, if you ever do it, like, like give me a piece or, give me a thing. And then they just did it and never called me back, nothing. And it was like, dude, you like totally fell for it. Like that was the worst fucking
It's a terrible idea. And
terrible
they
idea.
didn't cut you.
And the other one that everyone falls for is toothpaste for day and night.
Morning toothpaste and
morning toothpaste, night toothpaste. And like everyone's like, God.
Yeah.
Like, and I've had a few people.
Well, you heard it here first, folks. If you call John for oral care
Yes.
ideas, he's going to feed you
the best,
a trap.
the best idea ever.
Wow. So we have some like variety show elements to
Okay.
this podcast, and so there's kind of a quick fire round.
Okay.
This section is called Everyone's a Critic.
Okay. I'm good at being a critic.
What are your thoughts on the Mercedes G-Wagon?
Why do you ask?
I
That's
think it's an
just-
interesting tell.
Okay, well, I'll preface that. Do you know that I used to have one?
No, I don't, and that
Okay,
makes it
so-
more interesting.
I got the first car that I got was I was in Malibu in quarantine, bored, and we had a joke idea of what if I made a Moon Pal monster truck. So I bought a G-Wagon 4x4, the big one that's like popped up and all that, and I
The
put
Moonster truck.
the Moonster Mobile, and I decked it out with gigantic Moon Pal decals
Yeah.
everywhere. Probably the best thing I've ever done in my life. And we would like pull up to Nobu like with this fucking anime car. And it was just like so funny for like the bit lasted way longer than I thought. Like I thought it was gonna be like a 2-week thing. It lasted like a year and a half.
Yeah, well, once you have it, you have it.
You have it. It was
Yeah.
like, it's like the best thing ever. My thought on G-Wagons are they're the perfect vehicle to represent the sort of mindless mimicry of luxury status, the tasteful stratosphere crosshair of like douchey, elegant class signaling that also is like pretty sick.
Yeah, utilitarian, very nuanced.
Yeah.
Do you cook?
Never.
Do you have a single recipe that you go to if you need to whip something together that's
Noodles and-
comfort food?
Noodles and tomato juice.
So give us we have a one good recipe segment. So give us the full recipe. If you were to write this recipe, what's your
You cook noodles.
So you boil
noodles.
You have a particular noodle you like? Are you bucatini, spaghetti,
Not
angel
spaghetti.
hair?
It has to be a noodle. It has
Spaghetti's
to be.
not a noodle?
Oh, I don't know.
That's a hot take.
I told you I don't cook. I don't
Okay,
know
so
this shit.
how do you define a noodle?
One of the like smaller, thick ones.
Oh, like a rigatoni.
Yeah,
Okay.
rigatoni or elbows.
Yeah, elbow macaroni. Yeah.
Actually, elbow is the premier pristine choice here.
Okay, perfect. That's the platonic
Yes.
ideal of your noodles and
Yes.
tomato sauce. It's an elbow macaroni.
Elbow macaroni, boiled. And this is very important.
Please.
There's 2 ingredients. It's elbow macaroni and cold Campbell's tomato juice.
Campbell's tomato juice.
Tomato juice.
So not thick,
No.
but salty.
Yes, and watery. That has to be cold.
You cook it al dente or you cook it fully through?
Fully
noodles.
through. I
Okay.
actually go like to the other end where they're like mushy.
Yeah, you
kinda.
like a little bit on
Yeah.
the soft.
This is a baby meal.
Yeah, no.
This is a baby.
Yeah, this
But
has
it's very true.
childhood comfort food written all over
This
it.
was my childhood.
Yeah.
You take the elbow macaroni, you put it in, you take the cold tomato juice and you pour it over while it's hot, and you experience the cold on the hot.
The contrast.
The contrast.
Oh,
The
beautiful.
paradoxical snack.
Oh, fantastic. Excellent answer. What do you hope that your work leaves on society as a legacy?
I hope it's good, and I hope it lasts for a long time. And I think good is objective. I think everyone knows if something's good or bad. And I think the time is very important.
That
That
it's
lasts.
durable.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I think that's probably a very good measure of if it's good.
definitely. Well, that's all I've got for you. Thank you so much, John. Thank you for
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on during your truth-telling phase.
I should have gone harder.
Thank you for tuning into At Large. Today's episode was produced by Sick Bird Productions. Our theme song is Son of Sanford by Motion Worker. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and by email at atlargeshow.com. Follow me at SWH Norton on Instagram and Twitter, and DM me about the guests you want to hear on the show.